So, like I said, I'll introduce my wife when she gets home. She's out right now, trying to do a little work. So, a little about Lake County. We're the 18th largest county in Florida. About 19% of the county is water, and we have over 1,400 named bodies of water. Obviously, Lake County, that seems to make sense. We also have the highest point in peninsular Florida, Sugarloaf Mountain, which is literally just a few miles from where I live at 312 feet. It's what gives us the beautiful rolling hills over here and not all the flatlands that are out to the east and west. We are centrally located. We're about 100 miles to each coast. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes to each coast. Also, we're very centrally located in the sense that I can be in Key West in about 6.5 hours, and I can be in Pensacola in about 6.5 hours. So pretty much about as dead center in the state as you can possibly get. About 28% of the lands in Lake County are held in some form of conservation, whether this be public or private. So we have a lot of conservation easements on some large tracts of land that have been purchased, and also the cities and counties and state, and of course the Ocala National Forest makes up a huge chunk of North Lake County. All the photos in here are either mine or Beck's. And I may have thrown in a few from Peg Lindsay and Peg Urban from the Pair Association if I didn't have something that I thought was good enough. So a little bit about birding in Lake. We got 306 species on the eBird list. Spring migration, some years it can be really good. Some years it can be really bad, but it's generally weak. We're inland. Most of spring migration is coastal. Summer, we have a lot of the breeding species, including several that reach their southernmost range limits. Fall migration is really good across the whole area, especially around Lake Apopka. We have lots of little hotspots, and as Lake County continues to unfortunately develop, we're getting a lot of these properties are becoming surrounded by development and therefore become little migrant traps, very similar to what we see at Mead Gardens. Winter is great. Often brings a lot of ducks to the county. Obviously, we have a lot of lakes, a lot of water, going to attract a lot of water birds. And we also get a lot of rarities that show up, usually thanks to places like Lake Apopka. Some of the specialties for this area: red-headed woodpecker, Bachman sparrow, brown-headed nuthatch, our only endemic bird, the Florida scrub jay, limpkins, purple gallinule, Mississippi and swallow-tailed kites during the summer, of which Mississippi kites are pretty much at the southern edge of their breeding range across northwest and east Lake County. Last year we had somewhere between 8 and 12 nesting pairs. I documented the first pair in 2008, nesting in Lady Lake. Snail kites, and I have to go check, but they're still reporting a pair at Emeralda Marsh, and they may actually be breeding here now, so I have to follow up on that yet. We're at the range limits for breeding of a lot of species. Indigo buntings, blue grosbeak, orchard oriole, Acadian flycatcher, prothonotary warbler, and painted buntings, just to name a few. There's one of my favorite birds, the limpkin. Finding the birds. There's no way to get anywhere in a straight line in Lake County. We got too many lakes in the way. So I figure that if you want to go birding here, you can only bird one section of the county. So I divide it into 6 sections, which is the north area, which is like the National Forest up around Astor. East Lake, which is the area around the where 46 crosses the Wekiva. Golden Triangle, which is the Mount Dora, Tavares, Eustis, which is also where the county seat is. Northwest, which is the Leesburg, the Villages, Lady Lake, going up that direction toward Marion County, and eastern Sumter. Lake Apopka, because Lake Apopka in itself has a lot of birding spots. And then Claremont and South, which is the area kind of I live in. This is black and white warbler. So we'll start off in North Lake. The Ocala National Forest, that is probably the most famous birding area. These are several of the places that you can go out into and check out. The Paisleywood Bikes Trail is where the red-cockaded is. Also has hairy woodpecker. You can get 8 species of woodpecker there in the wintertime around Clearwater Lakes. And that's hiking the Florida Trail and the Paisleywood's Bike Trail along with the Alexander Springs Loop and Forest Road 63. Lake Dorr and Alexander Springs. I've actually never been to those two, but the eBird reports all look good. But it's just I have other spots that are equal. And there's brown-headed nuthatch. Some other spots, Lake George Boat Ramp. Pretty much the northernmost point you can get to in a vehicle in Lake County, and access to the Blue Creek Run paddling trail, which is one of 9 paddling trails we have in the county. If you paddle the trail, there's all these little bird boxes along the thing that no birds really use, but they're kind of cool. If we were up north, I'm sure house wrens or something might use them, but here, nothing. But there's Prothonotary Warbler and stuff along that area. It's a really good spot for that, and all sorts of weird shorebirds tend to show up, bells and terns and things that you wouldn't usually get inland. It's like so it's a good spot to occasionally find like sandwich terns, royal terns, all sorts, lots and lots and lots of brown pelicans. Ellis Acres become a really great birding spot in its own right out in the middle of nowhere. Really good for bobolink in the spring. Just a couple weeks ago, literally hundreds of them. Pine Forest has scrub jays. That's out toward the Volusia County line, heading out toward the land. And of course, as I mentioned, the St. Johns River turns up lots of good stuff. There's the Beck and Sparrow. This area is also home to the Black Bear Scenic Byway, which runs along State Road 40 and then has a spur that goes down toward Umatilla. Definitely driving along there's lots of great spots. There's a little water treatment plant out by Astor that you can park on the side of the road and scan. And if there's water in it, because they've let some of the affluents out, can be really good for shorebirds. I had 109 Wilson snipe in that pond the one time, and 1 western sandpiper. So here's some of the hotspots. They kind of see where everything is in relation to one another. Mentioned the specialties. Red-cockadeds, resident. Red-headeds, hairy, resident. Lots of resident. Then swallow-tailed kites are breeding birds, along with yellow-throated vireo and summer tanagers. Drive the Paisley Road or do the Paisley Bike Trail. They're everywhere. And there's our red-cockaded woodpecker. Some photos of the area. That's the Beautyberry chapter out on the Paisley Woods Bike Trail. Blue Creek Run. That's the Lake Sumter State College bio class at Pine Forest Park. Thermal wetland in the area, and that's one of the hiking trails. And Florida scrub jay. So East Lake County, got a red-headed woodpecker up there, one of my favorite birds. At the Lower Wekiva River State Park, Seminole State Forest, along with the Blackwater Creek paddling trail, which is not one of the county trails. It's part of the state trail system. You can paddle the lower Blackwater Creek. If you want to do the upper Blackwater Creek, you have to do Lake Norris Conservation Area. So Rock Springs Run. Birding there is okay. I think the butterflies are better than the birds. Neighborhood Lakes Reserve, still not open to the public, but it's coming soon. We're building the trail. It's under construction. Completion date is the end of this year or early next year. And once that's opened up, we'll have public access. And this is one of the only remaining areas in Lake County that still has burrowing owls, but it's completely off limits currently to the general public. As I mentioned, the Wekiva paddling trail, lots of purple gallinules, limpkin, Prothonotary warbler. Also, the Blackwater Creek launch point in Seminole State Forest is where the Acadian flycatchers are nesting from the breeding bird atlas. Cross Seminole Trail and Florida Trail. The Cross Seminole Trail is the Wekiva Trail is being built. We'll connect to that Cross Seminole Trail, and then the Florida Trail runs north-south. So hiking those trails can be really good really good birding. I can't wait to get the extra trails in to allow more bicycling and more access to this area that has a lot of birding potential that's probably not birded as much as it should. This gives you a layout of the area. So most everything is out, pretty much all out State Road 46. Seminole State Forest does have an access point off of 44. And we actually do have one more county property that will eventually open to the public's up around Pine Lakes there, but I'll add that once it's open to the public. Some of the specialties for this area: red-headed, Seminole State Forest, good spot for both red-headed and Harry's. They both nest there. Seminole State Forest, probably one of the easiest places to get Florida scrub jay. And if you run into Ralph, he's a great person to talk to. Backman sparrow, brown-headed nuthatch, these a lot of the same species as Pine Woods ecosystem. Acadian flycatcher, rare breeder this far south. They're nesting usually around the boat ramp there on Blackwater Creek. You can drive in if you get a permit. Otherwise, it's quite a hike. Planetary warbler, burrowing owls, as I mentioned, but right now they're only in a restricted area, and swallow-tailed kites. And there's our Acadian flycatcher. Some photos of the area. That's Lake Norris. It's one of the county and Lake County Water Authority led paddling trips onto the upper Blackwater Creek. There's great rookeries out there. That's a tree frog from my breeding bird atlas time out at Seminole State Forest. That's where the truck broke down and we had to hike back like 6 miles in the July heat from the breeding bird atlas with Ralph. One of the other roads in Seminole State Forest, and one of the burrowing owls. So I actually think this picture's from 5 Mile Road and not from neighborhood lakes. Northwest Lake, this is out by the Villages. The area is heavily developed, but interesting, the Villages is amazing birding. So Paradise Park and the golf course ponds, Spanish Springs, great spot for ducks. All sorts of rarities tend to show up out there. We've had snow geese out there. This past winter, there was the 2 greater white-fronted geese that kept moving back and forth between Sumter and Lake County. I never did get them in Lake. Flat Island is proven to be quite birdy at times, but you go out to the end, a great spot there for prothonotary warbler and access to the Helena Run paddling trail. Sable Bluff is another Lake County Water Authority property, and so is Borley. Both of these can be very birdy in the fall. They're at the edge of Lake Griffin, and birds don't like to cross water, and as the sun comes up, they don't really want to be flying overhead, so they kind of find their way down in some of these parks at times. In Venetian Gardens, if you want purple Gallinule, you have to kick them out of the way. So great spot for taking photographs. That's a picture of Flat Island. Some other spaces, Emerald Marsh. You can do the wildlife drives, open from the end of February till Memorial Day. Right now, I'd check on to see if St. John's has opened that drive up. I believe both the Apopka Wildlife Drive and the Emerald Marsh Wildlife Drive are both closed due to the current situation. Bull Hammock, it's a nice hike through area 6 and 7. The pond at the back end toward County Road 452 with a little boat ramp. Really good for ducks, especially in winter. Twin Lakes Park, little tiny park, has an ephemeral wetland, can be really good birding. Haynes Creek is an island in Haynes Creek on the Lake Eustis Run. Great spot for barred owl and prothonotary warbler. Silver Lake is right behind Lake Sumter State College. It fluctuates a lot. When the water levels are down, it can have a lot of shorebirds. We've even had nesting, inland nesting lease turn there when it was really low and the water exposed some sandbars. It's had roseate spoonbills and some other interesting birds out there as well. Pear Park has two different sections. It has the Gateway, which is off of 27, and the Wildlife Conservation Area, which is off of University Avenue. This is one of my favorite birding spots. You walk the river trail in fall, you get a lot of warblers And the gateway can also produce a lot as well. And then in the wintertime, it's a great spot for sparrows, especially around the nature center. You walk back to the scrub restoration project there. It's the Cape May warbler. Some of the key species for this area: purple gallinule, limpkin. This is the area where I first discovered the breeding Mississippi kites up around Lady Lake in 2008. Black-bellied whistling duck. This area has a lot of them. Not that there are not a lot of them everywhere now. Virginian king rails, Emerald of Marsh is a really great spot for these, along with both bitterns. You go out there in late winter, early spring, and it's a good chance you'll hear Sora's, king rail, Virginia rail, least bittern, and American bitterns all calling as the sun goes down or comes up. Sandhill cranes. There's also, this area has a nesting pair of whooping cranes, but I don't disclose where they're, if I hear about where they're currently nesting, I never disclose that, so they're left alone. Too many crazy people want to bother them for pictures. Grasshopper sparrow, great spot in Pear Park, good spot for those in wintertime. Purple Gallinule Venetian Gardens. Some photos, it's the Wildlife Drive, that's Flat Island. The Blueway paddling trail, somewhere on the marsh. That was the day we got lazuli bunting out there. It's also, I believe that's Flat Island as well, and this is Pear Park. More pear. That's one of the summer thunderstorms coming across Pear Park. The pavilion, that area is all grown up a lot more. This picture's a little bit old, but it was kind of cool. The area around there right now, there's a lot of firebush, and the hummingbirds really love it. Golden Triangle, so this is like the heart of Lake County. So March Park, that's around Lake Yale, this year had a lot of canvasbacks. If you get a good area to view the lake, sometimes the Lake Yale Circle, there's a little road there where they have the great kingbird. You can get a view of the lake with a scope, and you could see them. But good birding around the park. Gets a lot of woodpeckers because of a lot of the pines are dying there from being too close to the water. Hickory Point, we used to have the first couple years of the Wings and Wildflowers Festival was there. And the birding on the trail there can be pretty good. Wooten Park, in wintertime, great place to find gulls and terns. So Bonaparte's gulls, occasionally we get least terns and royal terns, brown pelican, which inland is unusual. Same thing with the Tavares Recreation Park or Buzzard Beach. Also two good spots to scan for white pelicans. Door Canal, Prothonotary warbler, all over the place along the canal if you want to paddle it. It's a really nice, quiet paddle. May not be so quiet on the weekend with all the boats going through. Lake Idemere, that's 1 mile, almost exactly 1 mile nature loop that goes around, can be really good for birding. And then Lake Gem Park, which is where I start my Zellwood Christmas bird count. That's part of my zone. And on a good day there in winter, I can get almost 50 species in the first few hours of the day. A couple of ringneck ducks. Some other ones. Pine Meadows, new area. Only been open for a little over a year now. I manage this property. The birding is spectacular. We've already had a lot of rarities out there. Red-breasted nuthatch, rusty blackbirds. The winter time's definitely when to go. LeConte and Henslow sparrows. So it's definitely worth a stop birding at. Lake May, birding there is up and down. When it's good, it's really good. When it's normal, it's, okay. Trout Lake Nature Center, they're doing a lot of land management out there that's definitely making the birding a lot better. And there's a giant, on Trout Lake itself, there's a double-crested cormorant roost in the winter with literally hundreds and hundreds of double-crested cormorants that come in the evening. And then Gilbert and Palm Island Parks and Grantham Park, these are all parks that are in the city of Mount Dora, right along Lake Dora, and are definitely worth stopping for some birding if you just want a short hike. And Palm Island has a really nice boardwalk. Deer Island, if you out by Lake Gem Park, you take the road out there, and there's like a little like spit. The road goes out that you have Lake Dora on one side, and I think it's Lake Beauclair on the other. And if you go out there in the winter, I've had as many as 5,000 ruddy ducks, amongst other things. So, and then out at the end, it's a private community, but the birding can be really good. They have nesting great horned owls and nesting bald eagles and stuff like that. Wood ducks. Some of the key species, wintertime, probably one of the better places to get white pelicans. Horned grebe at the lake walk at Eustis, good spot for horned grebe often. Royal terns, any of the docks on these lakes can be really good. Same thing with Bonaparte's gull. Dora Canal for Prothonotary warbler. As I mentioned, the ruddy duck. Now we'll get into what is probably one of the best birding spots in Florida, if not one of the best birding spots in all of the United States, Lake Apopka. So the North Shore Trailhead McDonald Canal boat ramp. We just had a great kingbird here, and I missed it by a couple of hours again. That bird's like becoming a nemesis for me. I'm over 4 on that thing. In the wintertime, lots and lots of sparrows. Lake Apopka Loop Trail. It's about 18.2 miles from the Green Mountain Scenic Overlook in Lake County on the western shore to Magnolia Park in Orange County on the east. You can bike it, hike it, but the birding out there is absolutely spectacular. Clay Island, you can access Clay Island either from Green Mountain or from the Clay Island Trailhead. It's a separate loop trail that goes around Clay Island. There's 4 observation towers out there that are all worth stopping at. The Apopka Beauclair Canal, it runs past Lake Gem Park, goes all the way down past McDonald Canal boat ramp and out to Lake Apopka. Can be really nice to paddle or hike the levees on each side. Pond H is up by the is just before the nutrient reduction facility or NERF facility operated by the Water Authority. Can be really good for ducks. At times, depending on water levels, one of the better spots for fulvous whistling duck in terms of numbers and being able to get close enough to get some photographs. As I mentioned, Green Mountain. I've been out there when I was doing my big year, late August. Jerry Walker and I went out. We're out there before daybreak, and the birds are flying over, and we can't tell what they are. And daybreak comes, and we finally get good looks, and they're eastern kingbirds. And by the time we finished up, a few hours later, we had almost 600 eastern kingbirds fly past us. It's also been a really good spot for Philadelphia vireo. We've had several of them. You're standing out on the tower, and they're literally in the treetop right next to you. Really amazing. Ferndale, probably my favorite local birding spots close to my house. 192 species on the checklist. Said lots of rarities over the years. Truscott Park gives me the best view of Lake Apopka. So after a hurricane, that's where I'm going. I've had sooty terns, bridled terns, great blackback gulls, brown booby, magnificent frigate birds, all from that park. Another spot nearby that you get a view of the lake, but not quite as expansive as Truscott Park, is the Montverde boat ramp. Other areas, drive Sugarloaf Mountain, go up to the highest point. It's mostly houses, but there are some couple of scrub jays up there at times, and it's a great spot for western kingbird and occasionally scissortail flycatcher, where there's a big radio tower up at the top of the hill. Scrub Jay Lane in the vicinity around Grassy Lake Road is the other road in that area. There's still some remaining scrub jays. Off of Scrub Jay Lane, Sullivan is a little dirt road that goes off one of the old farm underpasses on the turnpike that area is going to have a trail on it eventually. But there's a transfer station there for Duke Energy, I believe. And that's a kingbird roost right there in the winter for western kingbirds and occasionally scissortail flycatchers. Ranch Road, just bird the road. Used to have scrub jays, doesn't have many more, but is known to turn up rarities on occasion, including the Say's Phoebe. Pastatula boat ramp gives you a scan of the Little Lake Harris for ducks. The wet fields, this is at County Road 48 and Ranch Road, right there at the stop sign. If you pull off the side of the road, scan the wet area, it can have lots of shorebirds, sometimes more than 100 Wilson snipe. Hundreds of American pipits in winter. I've had yellow-headed blackbirds out there. I've had, when the water's up, you get ducks like green-winged teal and things like that. I've also had several hundred sandhill cranes along with a couple of whooping cranes when the waters were up, staying in there for the night for protection in the water. Lake Jim Sod Farms, park on the side of 48, be very careful. Bring your scope, scan the fields at the appropriate time of year for, especially in the fall, for shorebirds. I've had really good luck out there, especially for pictorial sandpiper. Lake Florence Park is in Montverde. You get some interesting ducks out there sometime. The last few years, it hasn't been as good. I don't really know what's going on. I don't know if they're having some algae problems or something out there. Swallow-tailed kite. This also County Road 455, parts of Old 50. It's the Green Mountain Scenic Byway. There's a great article I wrote about birding the Byway. So if you go on here, you can read all about all the places to stop and what you'll see and when to see it. So check that out. Lake Apopka hotspots. You can see how good Lake Apopka is. There is a lot of places to go birding along Lake Apopka. And this is just the Lake County side. The Orange County side, I'll keep a list over there. Here's some of the specialties. Fulvous whistling duck, probably one of the best spots outside of maybe STA 5 to get them. Ash-throated flycatchers, Ferndale and the trailheads at Clay Island and North Shore often have them. Swallow-tailed kites, we've had 1,900, as many as 1,900 out in this area. Just at the Green Mountain Overlook, I was parked there, and the one day I had over 200 of them go past. Field sparrows, Ferndale Preserve, probably one of the most reliable spots for field sparrow. Painted buntings, blue grosbeak, orchard orioles, least flycatcher, chat, which that was a nemesis bird. During my big year, it took me 16 tries to get that chat. After I found it in November, I couldn't find it when I actually started my big year. Western kingbirds, as I mentioned about the roost, and there's a orchard oriole. Some photos from the area. Apopka. These are not my photos. It's not my photo, but that is me before my beard. This is Ferndale. A little old, so this is what it used to look like. We've done a lot of restoration now, so it's changed a lot. That area has not changed. That's behind the restrooms. Great spot for thrushes. Some more birding at Ferndale. This is the edge of the southern hammock, I call it, the south hammock. Usually one of the best spots for warblers. And painted bunting, very reliable here in the wintertime. So, South Lake, Waterfront Park. I've had red-breasted merganser here, wintering gulls and terns, and sometimes I've even had common loon out on Lake Mineola. You can see from Waterfront Park or from Lake Hiawatha. Lake Hiawatha has a nice, it's run by the city of Claremont, but was purchased with money from several agencies, including Lake County. Has a nice hiking trail, can be very birdy at times, has great horned owls nesting in it. Lake Louisa, a lot of people like to go there. I don't find it terribly birdy, but it's still a nice place to check out. Hilochi, when they have the gates open, usually for hunting, you can drive in. The birding out there can be pretty good, especially for more open field meadow kind of species in the wintertime, including sparrows. Richloam, the Van Fleet Trail runs through this. Make sure you wear bright colors. It is a hunt area. They do a lot of hunting out there, but it's wet deciduous, and so species you would expect to find in that kind of habitat is what you want to look for. 5 Mile Road, this area is slated for a lot of development over the next few years, but it used to have burrowing owls, but I believe they're extirpated. But in the fall, probably about the for end of the first week, maybe second week of September. Great spot for common nighthawk. You drive along the road, and probably every other fence post will probably have one for 3 miles. Also, the one day I had like 5,000 bobolink out there. Crazy numbers. Never seen anything like it. Also great for eastern meadowlark and lots of gopher tortoises. Some other spots: Johns Lake Boat Ramp, Limpkin, snail kites. Launch Point, you can paddle there. You can paddle over to Scrub Point, which you can't access without permits from land, but you can paddle to it and hike the trails there, and that is permitted. And that sometimes turns up some good stuff. They had a Bell's Vero out there this past winter. Center Lake in Claremont can sometimes have some good stuff. That's right there off of 50 when you turn into the main heart of downtown. There's a lake right there. A lot of times has a lot of wading birds and some ducks. Supposedly, before my time, it had an exotic waterfowl collection that was in there that the city managed. Platlakaha River Park and Boat Ramp. This is not Platlakaha Park. Very important. One is ball fields. The other actually has natural area. So the birding here can be pretty good. Has a nice loop that's a little over half a mile. Goes through some scrub area that used to have scrub jays. No longer does, unfortunately, but has all the other species that you would expect. And then goes into some nice cypress hammock, cypress oak hammock that can be really birdy. The river is right across from this park, and so Platlakaha is county, Crooked River is water authority. The pasture is our largest piece of public lands property or conservation land the county purchased, over 800 acres. Has over 8 miles of hiking trail. The birding there at times can be really good. Winter is better, lots of sedge wrens and things like that. Definitely worth it. In the late July, you get good numbers of swallow-tailed kites. Scrub jay trail, BB Browns. They have scrub jay still, one of the few remaining scrub jays that are still around Claremont. This is a layout of where everything is. Go. Some of the species. I mentioned burrowing owls out on 5 Mile Road. Sure, they're extirpated, but I can only see what I can see from the road. And you're talking an area that has, tens of thousands of acres. Common nighthawks, chuckwills, widows, meadowlarks, shrikes, 5 Mile Road. There's shrikes everywhere out there. Also blue grosbeaks and stuff like that. Really good on that same section because they breed out there and then they winter out there as well. There's a shrike doing what shrikes do. Photos, Lake Louisa. And I find it terribly birdy, but it is a really pretty piece of property. Lochi. These are some pictures that Beck and I have taken birding in Lake County over the years. So we got a nice black and white warbler, east bittern, magnolia, blue-headed vireo, this is from the National Forest, hairy woodpecker, National Forest, king rail, tufted titmouse, also from the National Forest, purple gallinule with chicks from Venetian Gardens, Ferndale Preserve, hermit thrush, Blackman sparrow, shouldered hawk from Lake Apopka, blue jay, I think that's from my backyard, little blue heron, eastern bluebird, swamp sparrow, great spot, like loop trail and around McDonald Canal boat ramp. Florida scrub jay, that's one of the ones from Grassy Citrus Grove Road, right between Scrub Jay Lane and Grassy Lake. Nighthawk, that was in somebody's front yard. You can see the wood chips nesting there. For more information, I covered a lot of places, and it's hard to remember everything. So you can go to any of these sites. You can also check out the older version of this presentation, or most of what's in it, is also at Birding Lake. Lake County has a part of their Visit Lake site is called Birding Lake. It has a whole bunch of information about bird watching. that I helped them put together. They haven't kept it up to date as well as I'd like, but it's all there. Group events.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, group events.
Yeah. So these are all places that, you know, entities that do group events that you can join once you get past this whole COVID-19 thing. And if you want to go out, not by yourself. And we'll see you soon, Brownhead and Nuthatch. And thank you. Please check Archaeopteryx out for upcoming tours once things really get going again.
Well, thank you so much, Gallus. That was just terrific. Okay, participants out there, what questions do you have for Gallus? Type them into the chat box and we'll make sure he gets them answered. I'm sure someone has one. So prothonotary warblers, your best place is Dora Canal?
Dora Canal, if you want to do some paddling or you have a boat, they're all up and down the canal. Unfortunately, there's no way to walk the canal. So if you want to walk someplace and get prothonotary warbler, go to Flat Island Preserve and walk the trail out to the canoe launch. And there should be a nesting pair right there at the end of the dock. There's many more along the creek, along little waterways that go out to Lake Denham, and you can get a canoe or kayak from the Water Authority. You just make a deposit. It's completely free. You just make a deposit, which I think is $35 or something like that, and they'll give that back to you when you return the boat, and they check it and make sure everything's there. So then you can paddle that area.
Okay, and Jan Addison had the question to please go over your top 3 favorite spots again, and are any that are drivable?
Well, in terms of my favorite spot is always been Ferndale, and mainly probably because it's so close to my house. Also because the checklist there was built by me, so we purchased the property, and I've been doing checklists out there since 2006 when we took over the property. So it's kind of like, you know, play favoritism. After that, I would have to say Lake Apopka, and then I guess the National Forest. But in terms of drivability in Lake County, the only easily drivable spot is probably the Emerald Marsh when the wildlife drive opens up. So.
Well, the information that we have is that it's open Friday, Saturday, Sunday through the end of May, and they're going to explore possibly keeping it open longer if certain logistical things can be accomplished, because the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive is still going to be a little while.
Yeah. So it's a great spot to go birding. The new drive is not as good as the old wildlife drive, but there's a lot of good birds out there. So definitely worth checking out.
Okay, Kathy asks, are there breeding pairs of Mississippi kites near Lake Apopka?
No, there's nothing I know about further south than Mount Dora. Mount Dora is actually Sorrento, not really. Mount Dora is just the incorporated area. But Sorrento, the area around Sorrento is about as far south as I'm aware of any breeding pairs that I've been told about. So they tend to go from there up County Road 19 up around Lake Dalhousie, just south of Umatilla, and then cut across over to Lady Lake and south down to Leesburg.
Okay. Let me just make sure everybody knows to ask your questions in the chat box. We can wait a few more seconds. I'll ask you again, where was the kingbird roost?
The kingbird roost, there's actually 2 in Lake County. The one is on Fish Camp Road out around Lake Yale, and that's a newer one. It's only been there for a few years. The older one is on Sullivan Road off of Scrub J Lane in Mineola at the transfer station. And that's the older one. That's the one I discovered, I guess in 2010 or something like that.
And that one is a winter roost?
They're both winter roosts because the Westerns are only here in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
The one at Sullivan has had scissortail flycatcher on occasion. The one over on Fish Camp around Lake Yale has not. They've only had Western kingbird there, but they did have a gray kingbird show up with the Westerns in that area that I missed again by a day, out in that area. So,
how about where can you find hairy woodpeckers?
Hairy woodpeckers, the red-cockaded. If you go in and park at the Florida trailhead at Clearwater Lake Recreation Area and hike in on the Paisley Bike Trail, and then pick up, so you check that area out, and then eventually go out, pick up the Alexander Springs Loop to Forest Road 63. Along Forest Road 63, between two of the clusters of red cockadids, there's a nesting pair there. That one's been really reliable for a lot of people. And then if you go to Seminole State Forest near Bear Pond, and you also pick up the Florida Trail from there, there's been a pair in there. I'm not sure if they're still there. I haven't been out there and found them this year. When you're looking for them, you want to find dead pines, freshly killed pines that still have the bark on them. Once they lose the bark, the hairy woodpeckers aren't interested. So it needs to be a fire managed area, freshly killed pines. They want the pines with the bark on them still that are dead. So if you don't have those in the area you're looking, you're probably not going to find them.
Okay, fantastic information. Does anybody else have any questions? All right, well, Gallus, you've got a lot of compliments in the chat box. Randy and Mary say thanks. Kathy says excellent program. Linda Gahn says excellent program. So yes, we very much appreciated that. And it will be recorded, posted on this YouTube channel. And where else did you say? Well, we'll turn you over to Archaeopteryx Birding and Nature Tours.com to go on trips with Gallus once we are able to do that again. Jack Hilton says excellent program also.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
All right.